How's it going, guys? Thanks for clicking on to this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Little Tuesday morning recording here before work. This will probably be out by Wednesday, but I'm recording this fresh off the heels of the national championship where the Georgia Bulldogs rolled the TCU Horned Frogs 65-7, one of the most one-sided national championship games of all time. Going to start out by saying congratulations to all the Bulldogs fans out there. I know there's a lot of them, especially here in Florida, believe it or not, as they win their back-to-back titles. Stetson Bennett was brilliant in this game, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and people apparently after this game, they're looking for something else to be mad at aside from, a game that wasn't competitive. People are just now realizing how old Stetson Bennett is. He's actually older than 7 NFL quarterbacks. So for him to be in college football that long, you would certainly expect him to have a grasp on everything. But congrats to him. His story is a very unique one for him to transfer out of Georgia, go to junior college, return to Georgia, win the starting job, win the national title last year, and be the guy the entire year this year and win back-to-back titles for the Bulldogs. So for Kirby Smart and all of Bulldog Nation, I think it's great to see a new power emerging in the SEC. The other thing everyone's upset about today is obviously the one-sidedness of this game, make people think like TCU wasn't supposed to be there, shouldn't have been in the playoff and all this stuff. But we've seen this plenty of times before. We've seen it with teams like Notre Dame. Clemson's been blown out. Alabama's been blown out. I think I said Notre Dame, but they've been in multiple times despite the blowout. Oklahoma's another one that usually not the championship game, but the one or two times that they've made the college football playoff. So this is not unique to TCU. I don't think anybody should be banning them from future consideration because they did have a great year. The trip up in the Big 12 championship game was definitely surprising. So it's weird for them to go on this 13-2 run for the season and not even have a conference championship to show for. But they did win their semifinal game, so there was I forget which bowl game they were in exactly, but they do have a bowl win in this run. So they have something to show for what was a crazy and unexpected run for the Horned Frogs. They were picked to be, I think, 9th in the Big 12 going into this year. So they definitely, surpassed expectations on that. So for the Horned Frogs fans, obviously this is not how you wanted it to end, and as a future member of the Big 12 myself, I say great year, and we'll see where they go moving forward. While I did have Georgia winning this game, I certainly did not have it by this much, but it did help me secure my Bowl Pick'ems championship. I went 25-18 picking the Bulls this year. Not great, but respectfully over 500. So, I'll take it. And I did make a Bowl Pick'ems group. I'm going to try and make it more public next year. We had about 10 people in there. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we can have more next year. I did the same thing with the NFL Pick'ems, finished second in that. So not a bad year picking games for me this year. Hopefully in the next year or so we can convert some of this over to betting when Florida finally gets their act together on that whole thing. So first place in the bowl game picks and second place in the NFL season picks. So not a bad year for that for me. So as college football comes to a close, it was a very unique year with the transfer portal and NIL really being in full force. We had it a little bit last year, but I think everybody understood it a little more this year. And of course, as we talked last episode with Nick on the show, that there was just a explosion of transfers, and I think that will continue for another year or so until this players with COVID year is gone. And then people will kind of realize the grass isn't always greener. We've seen enough people already go into the portal that haven't necessarily found homes. And while some of them will find homes in the future, it's not going to be everybody. Like I think we had the stat last time that well over 40% of people that make the portal do not find homes. So we will see if that number dwindles down a little bit, which I would like to see. I would hate for someone to go in the portal and just lose their ability to get a degree and play college football. So hopefully that does go down. So very unique year for college football. Obviously, as a UCF fan, a lot of ups and downs. The bowl game did not go the way we wanted to, but we are looking ahead to the Big 12 where we will play teams like TCU and such. So that we still have a lot to be excited about there. And the one positive for me in the bowl games is watching Penn State win the Rose Bowl, because this is one of the last traditional Rose Bowls that we will have. I think it is the last for the Big 10 Pac-12 matchup that we're all familiar with. So for them to go out there and beat Utah was a lot of fun to see. And for those that, again, think that TCU shouldn't have made the playoff and it should have been Alabama and everything, we only have one more year of this current playoff before we move to the 12-team playoff, which everybody seems to be in favor for. So one more year as things are, and then we move into another new phase of college football. So as we transition out of college football to the NFL season, the playoffs are about to be in full swing. All the games are set. We are a couple days away from all that. I did have a really cool experience leading up to these playoffs. I was actually able to go to the Jacksonville Jaguar game where they clinched the NFC South, beating the Tennessee Titans and going to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Even though I live in Florida, obviously I'm an Eagles fan, I have not been to a Jaguar game in just over 12 years. It was a Michael Vick-led Eagles team playing David Garrard and the Jacksonville Jaguars back in 2010. And a coworker of mine was nice enough this time around to offer me some tickets. So shout out to Travis. We had a great time out there, and hopefully we get to go again soon. So it was very cool. I haven't been to an NFL game since 2018. I went to the Eagles-Bucks the year after the Super Bowl. So as much as I go to college football games, the NFL is not something I'm able to go to as often. So we had a great time. It was a very unique situation. All respect to Jacksonville. They don't pack that stadium as much as they did that night all the time. So it was great to see the atmosphere that way. People have come out. If it wasn't a sellout, it was pretty close. I mean, they were selling the standing room only seats even for this. Did not see a lot of empty seats, even in the upper bowl. So it was very cool to be in that atmosphere. Not the prettiest of games for either team, but the Jags did pull it out. The defense get a fumble recovery for a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and they're able to beat the Titans, which has always been a team that they've struggled with in the division and in the playoffs when it's called for it. So for them to get over that hump, I thought was really cool. So it was a great experience for them to slide into not only be in the playoffs, but host a playoff game. So I thought that was very cool that they'll be having that. So we will really quick, before we go any further, I was going to do an episode and bring that up last week, but after what happened with Damar Hamlin and the Bills' safety, I didn't want to come on here and just talk football like normal. People might not know this about me, but I've actually had multiple open heart surgeries. So as a kid, I was not allowed to play football, padded football anyway, due to the fear of a similar thing that happened to Damar Hamlin. So it definitely struck a chord with me. I was sitting watching that game like everybody else was. And I didn't see it live for whatever reason. I looked away from the screen because it looked like a very routine tackle, of course. And then we all know what happened after that. Obviously, the game was canceled, as it should have been. I kind of just stayed tuned in, not because I thought the game was going to be played. I was more morbidly curious on the process of canceling the game, and I will give a lot of credit to Bengals fans and the Bills fans that were there. Nobody was booing, nobody got restless, even in a time frame where they weren't getting a lot of information, and you could see, you could somewhat understand if people were eventually like, what's going on here? Do we leave? What are we doing? The whole rumor that the NFL came out and said, all right, you got 5 minutes and then we got to go out there again. I don't think that actually happened. I think someone just tried to look for a protocol of something and said, this is what would happen in a normal injury break. Like, I guess we kind of have been desensitized to a lot of, someone breaks a leg, literally, and they get carted out. Like, there is an allotted amount of time before you resume a game. That's obviously different than what we have here. So I think it was someone just trying to find some level of process in this. So I didn't think it was something that we really need to rake the NFL over the coals for. I do think they've handled this as good as they could have given the situation. And I still don't know what's going on with this whole neutral site for an AFC Championship game, potentially. We might know more about that in a week or so. Last I heard, they were looking for a neutral site. They looked into Indianapolis, and they declined to host the game. So I don't know if enough other locations declined. They may have to say, you know what? Just whoever has the best record at the end of that season or AFC playoff will host the championship game. Depends how many people choose to decline the bid, I guess. So very scary times. Great to see Damar Hamlin, as of yesterday, was actually released from the hospital. He's back in Buffalo, so that's a good thing. Small other minor note here is I've actually seen Damar Hamlin play live when he was in college. Pittsburgh came down here to UCF, and he was the starting safety at the time, not someone that I would have been familiar with, but it's interesting how you can make those connections with people sometimes. So seems like a great guy. We've all heard the story that his charity had a goal of $2,500 for like a Christmas season toy drive, and there's well over $8 million in that now. So it's a shame that it takes a horrible situation like this for people to come together, but you do appreciate that at least when backs are against the wall, the people do in fact come together, and that has been the one bright side to this. And I don't want to get into, will Hamlin play again or anything like that. I'm not really concerned about that. I doubt he's concerned about that. I would love to see him on the sideline or maybe do the coin flip for the playoff game for the Bills when they play the Dolphins. I think that would be a great sign of just to put everybody more at ease about what's going on, because we have had a whole week of football since, and things have been okay. It definitely makes some people double think their opinion of football and everything, and obviously it's not shown in the best light when something like that happens. But it wasn't anything that really could have been avoided. It's not something, that tackle, there was apparently some people were coming after T. Higgins, and I didn't understand the point of that. Most people have handled this well, with the exception of 2 or 3 people on Fox Sports that you can watch in the morning. Everyone else has kind of handled this the way they should have. And before we talk about anything, playoff-wise, I just wanted to throw out there that I'm very happy that Damar Hamlin is back home and safe, and looks like, I don't know if full recovery is the right word, but a significant recovery, and that's all you can hope for at this time. So going into the playoff predictions, first we will talk about the 1 seeds for a quick second. Obviously, they do not play this week. In the AFC, it is the Chiefs. In the NFC, it is my Philadelphia Eagles. Looked like they were going to run away with the number 1 seed, but after an injury to Jalen Hurts, 2 losses in a row, they actually had to come out and actually play a little bit of football against the Giants. Did enough to win and secured that number 1 seed. And that first round bye, I think, is going to be huge for a team that was starting to compile injuries. So another week off, I think, is going to be very helpful for them. The one thing that I think will hurt the most from Jalen missing those 2 games is I sat here before and said I don't know how you don't give him the MVP, but missing the 2 games, I honestly think it will go to Patrick Mahomes. His 45 touchdowns this year, also the number 1 seed on the other side, and he didn't miss any games this year. So at the end of the day, that's what it'll come down to. I remember saying, obviously, the Dolphins have taken a bit of a nosedive, but when Tua was doing his thing, that I thought, unfortunately, the only reason he wasn't going to stay in that conversation was the games he missed. And while there's still an outside chance for Jalen, because if you really go by the definition of it, we've seen this team without Jalen, and it's not the same. So the level of value has been shown off in full force in multiple games already this year. So I do think it'll go to Patrick Mahomes. I wouldn't get up in arms about it if it happens. I would understand why. 45 touchdowns to 35 touchdowns for Jalen. That's both passing and rushing for him, and about 45 total passing and rushing for Patrick Mahomes. So more touchdowns, didn't miss any games. I would understand it, but both are sitting in the same spot. They get to chill at home this weekend while these teams battle it out on Wildcard weekend. So still a good place to be for either one of them. So here are the picks for Wildcard weekend. You may have noticed I'm rolling solo for this episode. Couldn't have Nick on, but I do have his picks. So I'm going to give my picks, then Nick's picks, because he will be on the show next week, so we can pick right up as if he was here this week. So we will start in the AFC. I think the easiest one here is I have the Bills over the Dolphins. Obviously, that quarterback situation is pretty shaky, to say the least, for the Dolphins. No real word. I don't know that Tua plays, and even if he does, he's not going to be 100%. He's going to be rusty. Definitely going with the Bills here. Nick has also picked the Bills for that game. That one seemed pretty easy. Ravens-Bengals, a little bit harder. I have picked the Bengals. So has Nick, but he is giving me the caveat that if Lamar Jackson is healthy and ready to go, he is actually going to pick the Ravens, because I think at this point Lamar is fighting for that contract that he did not get, given that he's missed a lot of games this year. So we will have plenty of free agent talk in the coming months, and it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up. So we both have the Bengals if Lamar plays. Nick has the Ravens. Third AFC game, Chargers at Jags. You guys may be surprised about this, but Charger Dude 95, Mr. Nick Rice, has picked the Chargers. I've gone back and forth on this. My heart wants to pick the Jags, especially after the experience I had this past week over in Jacksonville. So I want to pick them. This is somewhat of a legacy game for Justin Herbert. I mean, he missed the playoffs his first 2 years. He's finally in the playoffs and would like to make somewhat of a run before people start to wonder, is this guy as good as we think he is? This is a very winnable game. As I said, even when I was in Jacksonville last week, they did do enough to win, but nothing about it was pretty. I do think, obviously, Justin Herbert is better than Josh Dobbs, who still made plenty of plays in the passing game against this Jags defense. I would almost like to be upset here and have the Jags win, because that would be a hell of a run for Doug Peterson and the boys to keep rolling. But Nick and I have both picked the Chargers for this one. Over to the NFC, we'll start with the easiest one first. I do have the Niners over the Seahawks. Great run by the Seahawks and Geno Smith, to make it this far and actually sneak into the playoffs here. But the Niners are playing so good. Brock Purdy has just impressed every week, man. It gets to the point that I think if they win even one playoff game here, that going into next year, Brock still might be the guy. He's definitely at worst going to be your backup that's pushing Trey Lance. Do you go back to Trey Lance at this point? A lot of questions for the offseason. It really depends on how this goes, but it might get a little hairy after this, but I definitely have the Niners over the Seahawks, and so does Nick. The next one is a game that I could see going either way. Nick and I both have the Vikings for this game, but it would not shock me at all if the Giants are able to pull it together, because even with the record that they have, the Vikings haven't been overly impressive in a lot of these wins, and the Giants, you just sit there, scratch your head, and wonder how they've gotten this far with this receiving core that they have. Not very impressive, but they've gotten this far. They've made it to the playoffs, and I'm going with the Vikings, but I am definitely on upset alert for this one, if you can even call it that, for the Giants to beat the Vikings. Last NFC game is where me and Nick actually disagree. I have Tampa. This is another legacy thing. I just don't see Brady's going to do everything he can to not get bounced in the first round. The Cowboys did not look good against Washington last week. Even though they didn't really have anything to play for, they still played all the starters. And when you lose to Sam Howell rolling into Wildcard weekend, not the greatest spot to be. Nick does have the Cowboys. I have the Buccaneers. I don't feel great about that pick, but just based on what I've seen lately, and obviously the Bucs lost to the Falcons, so they're not even coming in with a great example of what a playoff team wants to be. But this could also just be another, we might as well have a few separate picks so we can have a better record at the end of the year that's a little different. But don't feel super confident about that one, but I don't know if picking the Cowboys would make me any more confident anyway. So Nick has Dallas, and I have Tampa Bay. Just some closing notes here. This is a rather quicker podcast, a bit of a shorter podcast, but wanted to get the picks in there, and we'll be back full force next week with Nick on the show as well. But we spent so much time talking about Deion Sanders last episode and HBCUs and the future of them and things of that nature, so I'd be hard-pressed not to touch on this. I'm sure we will talk more about it next week as Nick has some experience with this school. But in the world of HBCUs, Ed Reed, the former great Raven and Miami Hurricane, has taken the job at Bethune-Cookman University as the head coach for the football team. And this definitely came out of nowhere. It was only a few weeks prior that their coach they've had for a long time had stepped down. And this definitely came out of nowhere. There was no whispers that they were going to get a big hire like this. And frankly, I know the program enough that I don't think it was a matter that they just had a bunch of money to throw at him. For whatever reason, this is just something that Ed Reed wanted to attempt. I don't believe he has a lot of coaching experience. I believe after he retired post-Houston Texans run, he did a little bit of defensive back work for them. And then I think he's done a little bit at the Hurricanes after that, but it's a very minimal amount of coaching experience. But Bethune-Cookman is definitely a school that will benefit greatly from this. Ideally, they can move right into that spot of the SWAC that is left by Jackson State and Deion Sanders. And granted, all those players were not able to transfer when Deion left, so they're still going to be the team in that conference for at least another year or two while all that talent's still there. But I am very excited to see what's going on just about 20 minutes up the road from me when the football season starts. And Ed Reed, I'm curious what his staff will be when he puts it together. Haven't heard a lot on that front yet. He's only been involved for a week or two at this point, maybe 3 weeks. And there's definitely going to be some hot recruiting trails. It's almost a shame that he came in after signing day. If they could have got this deal done a little sooner, maybe they could have flipped some guys for this. So really, going into this year, he won't have his fingerprints on it all that much as player selection goes. He might be able to bring in a transfer or two this late in the game, but I think it's more just going to be about a coaching thing. Bethune-Cookman only won, I believe, 3 games last year and the year before. I believe they went 3-9 back-to-back years. So that is, pretty close to the basement, and I'm curious to see if he can move them up a bit, win a few more games in this first year, and then really take off moving into next year. So that's very exciting. It's something we will keep tabs on moving forward here. But yeah, just a quick Tuesday morning episode here, guys. Got to get out of here. Got to get to work actually here in a little bit. So I hope everybody enjoys their week, and we'll have NFL playoffs this weekend, and we'll see you back around this time next week. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.